Hi, everybody. I wanted to give you a little bit more information on exercise two, which is a kind of complex exercise. Don't be worried if you don't get it all right, or you may be concerned, like, am I doing everything the right way? That's not so much the point here as you pushing into some of the elements of this exercise and seeing how far you can take them. So, don't worry about getting it right. For me, do the best you can. All right. So this exercise combines a couple things that we're going to be working on in the next weeks. One is to hone your attention on your writing skills to concrete imagery and detail. Now, we'll speak a little bit more about this in the week after, but almost all good writing starts with your ability to use precise details rather than abstractions. Abstractions are for Hallmark cards. They are not necessarily for stories or novels. We can talk a little bit later about how deep to get into details and what kinds of details, but to build the muscle of having your sentences full of sort of good, precise language and things you can see, smell, touch, hear, taste is super, super important. So we're combining that skill with the skill that we're starting to cultivate, which is thinking like a digital writer. And in this exercise, we're going to start with something that probably would turn out to be print writing and kind of start imagining how we would transform it. Ultimately, we want to think like a digital writer natively, the same way that people who know other languages talk about the difference between thinking in English, for example, and then translating it into that second language and really thinking in that second language. All right, so what I'm looking for here is probably about 2 to 3 pages, double spaced. It doesn't make a difference if it's a little short or a little long. That's not the important part. You're watching this video, and I wanted to stress here in the note that these exercises are explorations. They're not about you getting it right, but you showing me that you're really engaging with the subject matter and the ideas in strong ways. All right, so first things first, you're just going to do a free writing. Now, for those of you who don't know what free writing is, it means that you start writing and you don't stop for a given period of time. The key here is that often when we write, we have what some people call something like the inner censor or the critic or somebody or some part of us that's always stopping us from writing freely because we're thinking, is this bad? Is this good? Is this the right direction? What I'm interested here in is free writing, which is you just start writing and you see where it takes you. It could be bad, it could be awful, who knows? It could take you in a direction that you do not expect. It could take you in a lot of different directions. It could mean that you write the same word over and over, but that you start writing and you don't really stop and you're not using your, let's call it your super ego or your rational brain to think about it. So, what I want you to do is start with nonfiction. Remember something that happened to you or somebody else when you were a teenager that you didn't understand and write about it. Now, try to get details in. Like if you remember the smell of a lime, then talk about the smell of the lime. It's okay if you wind up spending 300 words on the smell of the lime. Doesn't make a difference to me, as long as it's detailed and precise. Stop in the middle of the last sentence without wrapping it up. You do that because it's easier for you to pick it back up later if it's not sort of wrapped up. What I don't want you doing is tying things into a nice, neat bow, because down the road you might want to expand this or change it or do something. All right, so number one, free write. Take a look at it afterwards and underline the stuff that's really concrete and detailed and great, and maybe, put a yellow highlighter through the stuff that's abstract. You'll get to that later. And take a couple minutes to write in your journal where you might go with this. What directions are interesting? Did something surprise you? Is there a way to fictionalize this? Write those down. Now for the fun stuff. Well, that's already fun. Now for the exercise part. What I want you to do here is start thinking like a digital writer. And the way I want you to do that is by converting this sort of linear story that you've written into 10 to 20 micro scenes, which means like you're basically sort of chopping up the story into little bits and then making them their own little moments in time that have their own gravitas, that have their own sense of power. So you're cutting them open without transitions and imbuing each one with a sense of precision and detail and smells and tastes and power, as if Everything is contained in this little 20 words. You're deconstructing the story. Why? Because maybe you want to mix up the time order. We're starting to juggle around the idea that stories in digital frameworks don't always have beginnings and ends. Maybe it doesn't make sense anymore. That's okay as long as the writing is strong for now. Focus on the language. So what I'm asking here is that you have 10 to 20 little stories that have been chopped up from this big story. Fictionalize as much as you want. Fine. Maybe you want to use incomplete sentences. Good writing comes from that. Maybe it's one long sentence. I don't know what it is. Maybe you start writing like newspapers where you have 3 columns. Lastly, I want you to start brain. So those are the 2 sort of things you're going to be turning into me is part 1 and part 2. You're also going to start doing some more digital brainstorming here. Write this down for yourself. We did this last week, but I want you to do this almost every week. How might this turn into something digital? Is there a particular application that seems like it's effective for this? Is there one part of this piece that seems more effective digitally than in print? How might specific content relate to certain kinds of questions we're talking about during the class vis-a-vis technology or software or artificial intelligence? Did you think about the fact that we come to writing as if it's for print? And how might you think about your coming to the writing differently if you were starting to think digitally? So that's really for you to write down some notes for yourself that you can use later. Lastly, submit it to exercise 2 box, and you are done. This is going to take quite a bit of thought over the weekend. Remember that when I'm grading your exercises, I'm not really grading them on like the quality of them. If you will get full marks if you show me that you are engaging with the exercise. Really, these are sort of like experiments or challenges. All right, talk to you later.